Okay. Right here. So I think I've met everybody, but if I didn't, I'm Tommy Radsong. I'm one of the funeral directors on staff here at the funeral home, and we're hopefully going to have a great seminar today. We got a great turnout. Thank you very much for being here today. Just like what just happened to me, my cell phone went off. So if you don't mind, if you can pull those things out to put them on vibrate, it would be great. I wanted to introduce some of our staff. You've pretty much met a lot of the staff already. Scooter is right here. He is actually on staff here. He and Boat. Boat, come on, everybody. So they are our care dogs, and they get more requests at this funeral home than the funeral directors do. So they're obviously, I'm surprised they're leaving this room. They're usually wherever food is and everything. Back over here is Kaiser. Kaiser is a dog that I'm taking care of. A friend of mine is a JAG in the United States Air Force, and she just got deployed to Guantanamo Bay. So I'm dog sitting for about 6 to 8 months. I told her you can't take a dog to Cuba, and if you do, he'll be walking one day and somebody's hamburger the next day. So she's got to leave him here with me for a while. So I want to introduce, I don't have good people working here. We have fabulous people working here. And a lot of you have met a lot of them. First one we want to introduce is Margie. Margie and I played the same sandbox when we were kids on Volusia, and we were part of the Volusia gang. You're really lucky because we keep her in this rubber room with one of those coats that tie in the back. We only let her out for special occasions and for special people. So let her out today. She's also a licensed funeral director. The guy that looks like me with hair, that's my son, Sam. He is the 4th generation. We've been in business for about 105 years this year. So hopefully we're around for a while. Matter of fact, we're the only family locally owned funeral home now in the Centerville area. Somebody might know we just purchased another funeral home down the street this year. So we're only one of 2 family owned funeral homes now in the Kettering area. So these big conglomerates are kind of eating us up, our industry up a little bit, but we're here to tell you, 5th generation's here. I hope he gets busy on the 6th generation. No pressure. Anyway, so we also have my other son, Max. Max was playing with Boat last night, got his eye scratched, so I had to take him to urgent care this morning. But that's typical of Max. So, but anyway, so then girls, come on in here. Erica, raise your hand. Erica is a funeral director and embalmer here. She's been with us over a year now. 2 years?
Close to 2 years.
Close to 2 years. We'll call it 2. Anyway, so wonderful person to have on staff. Jennifer is our newest licensed funeral director. She is going to be going down. It's kind of sad in our industry a little bit that about 60 to 70% of the families that we serve now are unchurched. So we actually have a funeral celebrant on staff, Brian Bennett. Some of you might know, he used to be here at a church. But all of our funeral directors are licensed celebrants to be able to help families through that end of life transition. Jen's going to go get her celebrant license here next week, so she'll be full-fledged and bona fide. Dave Wolf is around here somewhere. He is our also a licensed funeral director and embalmer. He's also our manager, been our manager for years and years. And the other girls you met, Sue and Deb, are just people that like to hang out here. That we have wonderful people that are our support staff.
Actually, Debbie came to us through the loss of her husband and then her mom within a very short period of time. And she said she was going through the grieving process as people do. And she said, I used to be an aide in schools and I'm really good at paperwork. So if you want, can I come in and help do stuff? Well, she's been in every week now since. We bring her in. She comes in whenever she wants. We assign her different projects. She did the beautiful arrangements on the tables today. She's just proven to be invaluable.
She's really great. So, with that, I'm going to let everybody else introduce everybody else. But Sam, oh, I forgot, we got to introduce Pam. She's one of our speakers later on. Pam and I have known each other 25, 30 years, I think. Isn't that about right?
It is about right.
So, Pam and I have been good friends for a long time. You know, there's certain suppliers that come in. I mean, we value the people that supply us. If it wasn't for them, you know, we don't own cemeteries, and I don't want to cut grass or rake leaves. So cemetery people can do their cemetery thing. So our suppliers are really valued. Pam's one of those valued suppliers that we've had for years and years, and love to have her around and stuff. So with that, I'm going to turn it to the route song with hair, and let Sam introduce all the other people. Sam.
Well, thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it, taking time out of your busy schedule here. I'm actually going to have Margie introduce our first speaker here today. I'm going to learn a lot about there's so much of the little stuff that you might not think about when it comes to estate planning and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really going to be very enlightening for you all. So with that, Margie.
Okay. Thanks again for being here. I've met a few of you before, and there's some new faces, so I'm sure we can help you, give you some good information. I'm going to like to introduce Mike Conway. Mike's got 45 years experience in the legal field here in the Dayton area, specializes in estate planning and wills and the importance of getting all those things in order, which people often wait until very late in life when they should do it early on. And then he also has his assistant or another attorney, right? Your name again? Corey, sorry, Corey, went right out of it. And then his paralegal is here as well, so he's got the whole staff. So we're gonna let them take, about 20 minutes and kind of talk about the importance of doing things. Like I said, Mike's great. Mike and I just are kind of related because his niece is married to my son, so I kind of like that connection. So anyway, so I'm gonna let you go ahead. Thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you, Margie. Yeah, I've been at it about 25 years, I guess, more or less. Still practicing. I'll get it right one day. All we do is wills, trusts, estates. I say that. I've got a couple of U.S. tax court cases, but other than that, that's what we do in our office. And at any one time, we probably have, 25 estates, and probably every year we do at least 150 wills, trusts, estate plan. So that's what we do. We don't do divorces or DUIs. So if you get in trouble on your way home, don't call me. The other thing, they say lawyers are, you can't live with them and you can't die without them. And nowadays it's not really all that true. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Basically, when I meet with people, we talk about, okay, what's the plan during your lifetime? What happens if you need help? What do we do? Well, we put together a health care power of attorney. What that says is, I'm appointing people to make decisions for me, if I can. So if you're in a hospital and you're sedated or you've had a stroke, you can't speak, or whatever the reason, that you can't make or communicate a healthcare decision, you can appoint people in a sequence. So you appoint one person, then another one, then another one, if you want. And those people will make healthcare decisions. You give that to the doctor or hospital, and they put it on your chart. And if they need a decision and you can't make it, then they call those folks. You can get a decision. And the idea is that those people will know what you would want for healthcare. And I've seen those things be invaluable many times. Had a case where a lady had severe lung cancer, and they kept pumping her full of sedation. The poor lady couldn't talk. She had 4 siblings, no kids, no spouse. And the siblings are all at the nursing home. And the doctor came in and said, we can do this and we can do that. And two of them said, well, let's do this, and the other two said, let's do that. So doctor, where are you gonna go? So it's a good idea for once in a while. A similar document is called a living will. And a living will in Ohio says, this is my plan. Okay, this is what I want. I don't want to be kept, typically it says, I don't want to be kept artificially alive. So if I have a terminal illness, I'm going to die soon, there's no cure, then I want you to not be poking and prodding me with needles or hooking me up to anything. I want just to die naturally. Or if you don't want that, you can say, gee, I want everything. Keep me alive as long as I possibly can. In my experience, there's an age-related thing there. If you're 25 years old, you say, keep me alive forever. If you're like me, I'm 73. If you're 73, you say, gee, I don't think I want to suffer through a lot. So let me die naturally. So, there are different feelings about that. And the point is, you want your feelings to be the ones that the doctors act on. Okay, so there are two documents. The third document is a financial power of attorney. I've seen a lot of cases where people can't drive anymore, can't get around, can't go to the bank, can't go to the broker, can't do those kinds of things. Maybe have to sell a house and want to go to a closing, or can't go to a closing, that kind of thing. So you have a power of attorney for financial purposes. Some people try to do that all in one document and say, I've got 3 people maybe lined up to make financial decisions for me, so I'm going to put them all in one document. It's okay, but the problem with that is if you walk into the bank with one of those and you're number 2, the banker says, well, where's number 1? And they won't honor it. And are there any bankers? Uh-oh, oh, hi, Bob. So I always joke, and you'll appreciate this. Bankers only have 2 emotions, fear and greed. And what happens is the fear comes out. So when you have a situation where number 2 shows up, the banker's worried that if I give this guy the $50,000, what if the actual person comes in tomorrow and wants the $50,000? I'm giving it away. So they say, I'm sorry, but we're not going to follow that directive. So what I do is separate ones. So if you have 3 different people, okay, we do 1 for this person, 1 for this person, 1 for this person. So when number 2 walks into the bank with their 1 document saying, I have the power, the banker then can say, oh, okay, I'm not worried about where number 1 is. So it works that way. So those are 3 documents during your lifetime that really can help in difficult situations. Then there are other ways of taking care of things. If you're married, have a spouse, you might want one of the spouses to have the power of attorney for the other, because you might want to, transact some business, sell a house, do things like that. So it helps you, even when you're married, and you have a spouse, you appoint them as an attorney in fact, under a power of attorney. Okay, so as far as ownership of property, talking about real estate, you can have ownership in different ways. The presumption in Ohio is if you have 2 names on a deed who own real estate, they're tenants in common. What does that mean? Well, each owns a half. So, if one of them dies, that half has to go to probate court. I'm sorry?
It goes to the other one.
No,
No?
it goes under probate court. Now, it might wind up going to the other one. If you have a will or under the law, it might go to the other, but you have to go through court. Now, we do real well. We make a lot of money in probate court. But if you stay out of there, it's probably better. It's less expensive, it's not public, those kind of things. So we try to help folks stay out of probate court if you can during your lifetime. So if you plan, you can do that. That's a big advantage. So we do what's called a joint and survivorship will. It's not technically that under the law, but Ohio has a Supreme Court case that says if you have words of survivorship in your deed, we'll honor that. So what that means is you write your deed and say, for their joint lives, remainder to the survivor. That's the legal language that says, okay, one dies, all we do is we prepare an affidavit saying my spouse died, my certificate's attached, it's mine now. Simple, inexpensive, quick. Okay. The alternative is to go to probate court. We have to name all the next of kin and serve them with notice of the estate. We have to file an inventory. We have to file a certificate of service of the will. We have to file an account. We have to do a lot of things in probate court that take a long time, and we have to wait 6 months because there's a law that says that after you die, creditors can file claims within 6 months after you die. So we have to keep the estate open for 6 months, waiting for all the claims. Even if there aren't any, we still have to keep it open because there might. So it's a long, drawn-out process. Costly. So that's what we do with deeds. Real estate with a spouse or with anybody else and your tenants in common. You just do a new deed from yourselves to yourselves and say, now it has survivorship rights. So we can take care of that very inexpensively, quickly, easily, and like that. Okay, so that's real estate. Automobiles. If we talk about historic automobiles or collector's type items, that's one thing. But most people don't have it. Most people just have, maybe each spouse owns a car, or maybe one of the spouse owns both cars because the other one doesn't want to run to the license bureau every year or whatever. So a lot of times you have more than one car. So if a spouse dies with a car or 2 cars or 3 cars, whatever it is, as long as the total used value on the date of their death doesn't exceed $65,000, they just take the title and the death certificate to the title office and get a new title. Quick and easy.
Now, if she's on the title, it doesn't, you don't have to do anything, do you?
That's correct. Well, she'll have to take it down and get a new one just in her name, get the name off. Assuming you die first, the men die first.
You're saying, combined of the 2 years.
That's right. You add them all together,
65,000.
65,000 is the limit, you can do that easily. If you exceed 65,000, then we have to take whatever we have to take to probate court. So the $65,000 worth can be transferred.
Yeah, I had knee surgery and it's killing me.
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
just need to chair to prop my leg up.
Oh.
Can you do that?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to the other side.
No, that's all right.
Okay, Chuck.
I had knee surgery a few years ago, and I was at the high school football game working the chain gang, with the chains. And the referee wanted to do a measurement. He picked the chain up, and I'm holding the pole, and he's like, oh, hold on. I know how that is.
Oh, you're fine. No, we don't want you to be uncomfortable.
There you
Up there, I'm trying to pull the leg back from the chair.
go. Okay, so those are some of the things we can do.
Matters.
There's something else you can do, and you can do this with bank accounts, cars, really about anything, investment accounts, and that's called transfer on death. The banks call it pay on death, but it's the same thing. And transfer on death says, for example, with real estate, if I own a piece of property just in my name, and I want to leave it to somebody, it can be 1 person, 2 person, whatever number of people, I'm going to leave it to them. I can file an affidavit with the county recorder, and it says, when I die, it belongs to these people. Okay, and then what they do is take my death certificate, put a new affidavit on it, file it in the recorder's office and say, Mike died, it's now my property. Done. Quick, easy, no probate.
But do you have to do that if, like, she's already on there as a beneficiary, and my children are on her after she dies, do we have to do that even then?
Well, it sounds like you've already done it.
Okay, that's what
If
I
your children
mean.
are beneficiaries, you probably did it with a transfer of death affidavit.
Well, with investment, we do an investment.
And you do that with, they'll do the same thing. Yeah, they'll do the same things.
Okay. I don't have to do anything about that.
So good, you're already took good care of it. It's good to know. So that's what you do. You file this transfer on death affidavit. You take care of it. You've given it to your children or your friend or a charity or whoever you want to go to. So you can arrange all that ahead of time, and it really makes it easy for the people you leave behind to take care of. Let me think. What else am I talking about? Oh. Didn't they have any questions about any of that? Other than what we asked? No? Another thing people talk about are trusts. And really all a trust is it's an agreement between a person that sets up the trust and somebody called a trustee. And it separates the legal ownership of the item from the real ownership. Okay, so for example, if you think about somebody like Shirley Temple, okay, she's a little kid, and she's a great performer, and she makes a lot of money. I think if she were alive now, she'd make a whole lot more money. But she made a lot of money when she was young, little kid. Little kids legally can't handle that kind of money. So what has to happen? Somebody has to step into her shoes. Well, kind of a joke, I guess. But somebody has to step into her shoes and handle her money for her. Okay, who's that? Well, typically it's a trustee. So there's an agreement written with the parents, and maybe the parent could be a trustee, that says, we'll take care of her money until a certain age when she can take care of it. You can do that with anybody. You can do that with adults. Whatever. So all you're doing is separating control from the ownership. So if you have a minor child or a special needs child, or you have somebody that you want to take care of your spouse, it's a second spouse situation, and you've got kids you want to take care of otherwise, you can put it in a trust, say, here, trustee, make that a third party, maybe a bank, maybe a friend. But that's the trustee, and the trustee says, you give the trustee instructions, say, trustee, you take care of this money. First, I want you to take care of my spouse during lifetime. When my spouse dies, I want this money to go to my kids. Real neat little way to take care of that. And you can be pretty sure that that's going to happen because the kids can sue the trustee if the trustee misuses the money. So it's legally set up, and there are responsibilities that the trustee takes on. And there are professional trustees, companies that do just handle trust. And of course, a lot of banks do too. So you can have them take care of it. Like that, if you have that situation where somebody's going to use it for a while and then somebody else gets something, you keep that going. And there are all kinds of trusts. So you might hear things like revocable, irrevocable. You might hear things like Medicaid trusts and that kind of thing. And I'll talk about that. I'll talk about Medicaid here in a couple of minutes. How am I doing on time? Okay.
We're new to Ohio, we've only been a couple of years. To what dollar amount before the state starts to tax inheritance, or is it
We have no estate tax in Ohio
at all?
at all. I understand Pennsylvania has one.
Yeah,
Pretty heavy.
yeah, million.
An inheritance tax, it's
Yeah.
not really a state tax.
Everything can be there.
Yeah, they tax it around you walk on.
Oh, boy.
They tax there.
Pennsylvania.
Yes, well, yeah.
Okay, so Ohio has no estate tax. They repealed that a few years back. The federal estate tax right now starts at $12.9 million per person. So for a married couple, you're over $25 million. So as long as your assets are just under that 12.9, you're good. You don't need to worry about it. Now, I will tell you that in a couple of years, that is supposed to revert back to what it was when Trump was president, which was $6 million. So boy, it really cuts it way down. So as long as you're probably good in the future. Although that is indexed for inflation, so we really don't know what the real number is going to be. So it'll probably be 7 or 8 million by that time. I think that's 2026 or something like that. It's coming up. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about trust, unless anybody has a question. Yes, ma'am.
How often should you review the trusts?
As often as you need to, if there are changes. So, for example, if your family situation changes or the beneficiaries change, you have a charity in there that goes out of business. I have a will right now that we're administering the state, and charity went out of business. So what do you do? Well, we're going to go to the court and say, Judge, pick another charity, and we'll give it to them. So there's that. How often? Well, if you have people who are born, people who die, your situation changes.
What if none of that changes?
Probably fine.
Does the state law change very often.
Not very often. Recently, we had the Ohio Trust Code. It became a law passed by the legislature. Really, all it did was take all of the case law that accumulated up till then and made it a statute, what we call a statute. So the legislature passed it just to clarify all that, so you don't have to go read all the cases to figure out what the law is. So it didn't really change much. But, and I would say I would not rewrite a trust for that. Now, some years ago, the federal estate tax was way different than it is now. Back when, let's see, when Reagan was president, the amount that would be taxed for the federal estate tax was $60,000. So it's not hard to reach $60,000 if you own a home. And if you have other assets, you can imagine being taxed for everything over $60,000. Ronald Reagan said, you know, it ought to be 10 times that. So Congress passed a law saying it's now 600,000. And then it started going up from there, and now it's 12.9 million. So that's what happened. So that did change things. But back then, whatever you left your spouse, you could only deduct half of. So now you can deduct all of it. So if you have $12 million and your spouse has nothing, and you leave that to your spouse, there's no tax, and you can still leave another 12 million to your kids, because the 12 million you left to your spouse is deductible. So the only part that's taxable is the other 12 million you leave to your kid. Then when your spouse dies, your spouse can take that 12 million and leave it to the kids. So there's no tax on any of it. So that's kind of, you know, what's going on now. Back then, what we used to do is, since you could only deduct half what you gave your spouse, and there was a limit of 600,000 before you even get taxed, we had a plan that said, we're going to give the kids 600,000, give the spouse everything else. So we pay tax on. It's more complicated than that, of course. But basically, that's the concept. We don't do that now. So a lot of those old trusts that were set up years ago to take advantage of the estate tax law, they still work. Okay. But you might want to change that. But that's been 25 years. 20 whatever it's been. When Jimmy Carter was president, they said, you know, we ought to change another rule. And the other estate tax rule is that whatever you own when you die, let's say your house is an easy example. If you bought your house for 30 years ago, and now it's worth 150, well, if you sell it, you have a $100,000 gain.
Mm-hmm.
And ignoring there's an exemption, but ignoring that, you pay tax on $100,000 capital gain, okay? For the example. So now, the rule is that whatever it's worth at the time of your death becomes the new cost for whoever gets it. So if you leave it to your kids, the $150,000 becomes their cost, not your $50 you pay. So if they sell $150, they don't have a gain. Whereas if you had sold it the day before you died, you would have a $100,000 gain. Carter said, no, we're not doing that. We should tax the whole thing, no matter who sells it. So they have what they call carryover basis. So that changed everything. We don't have to worry about that now because they figured out that it was really impossible to administer. So they retroactively changed it and went back and erased that carryover basis. So a lot of stuff has happened over the years. And I'm sorry to confuse things, but I get triggered sometimes. When you're a nerd, you're a nerd. No, you can't. But so that's the where I would change it. You know, whenever things like that change. I don't know anything right now to say to change. I did want to mention Medicaid because it's on a lot of people's minds. Once you become 50 or 60 years old and you start thinking, gee, what happens if I need medical help or my spouse needs medical help or somebody I love needs medical help? What do I do about Medicaid? There are lots of things you can do. Okay, number one, Medicaid says it's a welfare program, and it's different than Medicare. Everybody's on Medicare. And Medicare takes care of your regular hospital bills and doctor bills, things like that, to some degree, and then you have to co-pay and deductible and all that stuff to do. That's separate. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Medicaid, which is a welfare program. And Medicaid says we don't want people to be laid up in long-term care, in a nursing home, assisted living, or anything like that, you can't pay for it. Okay? We should pay for that for you. So Medicaid says, we're not gonna pay for the rich guy. You know, so if you're a millionaire, sorry, we're not paying for you. We're only paying for people who need to be paid for. So what does that mean? Well, they look at your income. And typically, you're allowed, out of your income, if you're single, and you have to go to a nursing home or assisted living, you can keep $50 a month of your income. All the rest of your income has to go to pay for your long-term care. Then they look at your assets, that's stuff you own. And if you're single, you can own $2,000 worth of stuff. That's it. And then they'll cover you. Okay, now, a pre-need funeral doesn't count. So you can buy a beautiful, expensive funeral with a gold-covered casket if you want. That doesn't count. So that doesn't count against your $2,000. So that's pretty neat. Get that arranged and paid for, and take that burden off your family. Your home, if you intend to go back there and live someday, even if it's impossible that you're going to go back and live there, your home doesn't count. So you can have a $10 million home, it doesn't count. As long as your other assets are $2,000. Let's see what else doesn't count. A car. If you need a car to go to the doctor, or somebody's going to drive you to the doctor with your car, that doesn't count. Kind of crazy, but that's the rule. Okay, so those things don't count. Everything else counts. IRAs, 401ks, investment accounts, bank accounts, all that counts against you. So you have to get that down under $2,000 before they'll pay. Now, they don't take anything from you. It's just they won't pay your bill. So you've got to show them, I'm down under $2,000. I have these other things, everything else. And then they'll pay for it, okay? If you're, yes?
So if you try to give your money away so that you can get to that point, there's some kind of a rule, isn't there, that within 5 years?
Right, it's called a 5-year look back, they call it. And the deal there is, they measure from the date you either go to a nursing facility or assisted living facility for the first time. So they look back 5 years and say, have you given any money away? Now, if you've given Christmas gifts for 30 years, that doesn't count, as long as they're reasonably modest. If you're getting $10,000 a year to 50 different people, that's probably going to count against you. But if you give, $100 at Christmas to your family, nobody cares about that. Okay. Otherwise, those count against you. Now, what does that mean? Well, you go to a nursing home. Let's say it costs $13,000 a month for a nursing home. That's what they cost. So you go to a nursing home and they send you a bill for $13,000. And you've given away $50,000 in the last 5 years. You have to find a way to pay $50,000 worth of nursing home bills before they'll cover you. And so that's a problem for some. So what we can do is there are Medicaid trusts that can be written. We're talking about trust. A Medicaid trust, and a third party's name is trustee. And what you do is you give them $50,000 and you say, hold this for my kids. In the next 5 years, I have the right to call it back if I need to pay for my nursing care. Okay. If I don't call it back, it stays there. My kids get it. So you can do that, and hope you don't need a nursing home for 5 years. But you still have to survive that 5 years without nursing care before that goes to the kids. Does that make sense? So it's a tricky trust to do. It's an irrevocable trust. You can't change it once you sign it. So I haven't done too many of those because there are other options. One option is Ohio is what's called a partnership state. And that means that if you buy an insurance policy, it's an annuity room, it has to be a certain kind of annuity, and it takes care of your first 2 years in a nursing home. You can have whatever else you want. You can have that $10 million house and a $10 million investment contract. No problem. They'll cover you after 2 years. The reason is that most people don't stay in a nursing home longer than 2 years. So the state says, gee, if you pay for the first 2 years with this special annuity that we like, then we'll cover you after that, and then we don't care what you own. We'll take care of you, because you've taken care of the bulk of our problem. Okay? It's called a partnership. And I don't get a thing for this, and Gotzon doesn't get a thing for this, but there's a firm called Long-Term Care Insurance Agency, and they probably work with your own insurance agent, because they're the experts in town on long-term care policies. So you can get a policy to cover that kind of stuff. They're expensive. You can imagine 2 years of nursing home care is a lot of money. And if you're close to nursing home age, they don't have a lot of time to earn a lot of money. So they're going to charge you pretty much whatever the benefit is. That's a lot of money. So if you have a big chunk like that, you can protect everything else by buying one of those policies. Now, does it mean it has to be used for nursing care? No. If you die before you go into nursing care, then it can go wherever your beneficiary is. So that works. You can do that. I did want to mention, if you're married, for a married couple, when you're talking about Medicaid, they look at the total picture. So they look at what you own and what you earn. So your total income comes in. The spouse that's not going to the nursing home can keep $2,500 a month, roughly. There's an exact amount, but it's around $2,500 a month. Not a lot of money. But they can keep that. All the rest of it goes to take care of the person in the nursing home. And then they'll pick up the balance. The state will pick up the balance. As far as assets go, those same things don't count. The house, the car, all that stuff doesn't count. And the other spouse can keep half of what you started with, what they call accountable resources. Okay? Up to $125,000 or so. And there's an exact amount for that. And that changes with every year. But it's around $125,000. So if you start out with $250,000 in an investment account, you keep half of it. So you've got to spend the other half down until you get to 125, and then Medicaid will start picking up. So it's not $2,000 for a married person. It's up to $125,000 for the other spouse to keep. It's a minimum of $25,000. So if you start with $40,000, you have to spend $15,000 down to get to $25,000. So it's not half. If you're under 125, it changes a little bit. So, anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah.
I mean, 20 minutes is not enough. But I wanted to mention those things. Is there anything else? Oh, I've got on this list, veterans benefits and long-term care insurance. I mentioned the long-term care insurance. There's another kind of long-term care insurance that says if you pay so much a month before you go to a nursing home, then they will pay so much a month under their terms of the policy if you need to go to a nursing home or assisted living or have home health care or anything. Typically, those policies are pretty expensive if you take them out over age 60. If you take them out when you're 30, they're inexpensive and you just keep paying every month. And then when you get to be at a nursing home age, whatever that might be, you got coverage. If you don't have that kind of a policy now, and you're close to the nursing home need, you're going to pay a lot for those kinds of policies because they're going to have to pay a lot to take care of you. So that's kind of how that goes. If anybody has any other questions,
Is there a limit when you go to the nursing home? Like you go to the hospital, you're disabled for like 90 days, 120 days. Is there a limit?
well, that's Medicare. Medicare
It's like 90?
Medicare says if you need to go from the hospital, if you're in the hospital at least 3 days and you need to go to a nursing facility or a rehab facility, the first 20 days, it doesn't matter how you're doing. Whether you're doing well, you're recovering, whatever, it doesn't matter. They'll cover 20 days. After that, you have to improve pretty much every day. And they'll cover you another 100 days. But that's Medicare. That's different than Medicaid. And as I say, almost everybody has Medicare.
You also have to require skilled care.
Right. You can't, it's not just what they call that? Maintenance care. Yeah, you can't go to the spa and have them covered. You have to be treated by somebody. So you've got to have a physical therapist, a doctor, those kind of things, or nursing care, that kind
And
of
you have to be progressive also.
Yeah, every day, you have to get better every day after 20 days, that's right, but that's Medicare. Yeah. Most people don't need lawyers for Medicare, sometimes Medicaid. Any other questions, because I think I'm way past time.
When can we sit down with you and talk about this in
Oh,
specific
anytime.
for our individual cases? I assume it's got your number.
Yeah, I
so-
got my information. Yeah,
Okay.
let me call.
And are you, I know certain attorneys, it's like, first appointment is a free initial consultation.
Oh, yeah.
Others, they have a pay.
Yeah, we'll talk to you half an hour or 45 minutes for that in charge. Yes, sir.
When's your next Sunday?
I don't know.
Nice.
Today at 6.
Yeah, that's right.
Today at 6, we'll do the
Back
same.
here at 6 o'clock. We'll see what's good.
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
We'll notify you if you want to be notified when you have future seminars.
Great, okay. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. So this does conclude this portion here today. We're gonna take about a 10-minute break in case anybody needs to hit the bathroom, get some more food, all that good stuff. We got plenty left here too, so feel free. But yeah, in the meantime, talk, go to the bathroom, get food, beverages, all that. That's what we're here for.
I have.
That's right.
Okay, that's what I was saying. I know he had someone. Yeah, so I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's a little bit different than the one that I was. He's sitting at. So Michael has a lot of health issues, general, and
Can I help you find something? Yeah, come with me.
he said it started earlier today, but it's like. Oh, you do it? So we're doing it. Yes, I looked all of them. Like whole meals like. Okay. Maybe, oh gosh. I can try to talk about that. Maybe kind of talk in general. Well, there is a little bit, I mean, so that's a lot of the PowerPoint. I don't know if I'll go over it, but it does talk about like why you should do it now.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it is,
Right.
do it now. Maybe the first thing down the road and it's nothing going on and all the issues.
Yeah.
You know, so that's in there with you and I can use the restroom. Oh, that is great. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
then that way,
Yeah.
she's on that, I can.
Okay, that would be helpful because then maybe the last
Yeah.
things that,
And
you
that's,
can
yeah.
address that way.
I should.
Yeah, and I was
But I
just
think
saying,
and that's
you know,
it
depends on
depends on
plastic,
what
depends on
color.
this, that, color, stuff.
It does. So yeah, so that's it. Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. And then you just and I can put you just put yeah. Oh, perfect. All right.
And then I'm just gonna step up right after these.
Okay.
Because we're probably gonna do this.
Yeah. I won't.
Yeah, and I mean, 15, 20.
Okay. Perfect. You and it. Okay. Good.
So I'll minimize yours.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
You know, I know. It's a tell right there. We married a girl. Oh, I see her. You know. Have fun.
Oh, here, we'll go the really shortest route, either way, 6.5. Hours. There you go.
I'm sorry I talked too long.
You're fine.
It takes a long time.
Oh,
That's where it was going.
Oh,
So
good.
I told her just kind of hit the highlights, don't worry, so you're fine. No, that's all great mute information.
That's a lot of stuff.
There's no way
Yeah,
to
it is.
cover
It's
all
a
that
lot.
that
Listen,
quick.
my parents are going through all that right now. It is a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and my mom is handicapped, so they're preparing for, having like, I guess, put her into so it's a lot of information I've been trying to go through, so I get that. Oh. For sure.
Yeah.
But all good information, so.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So you're all fixed up, huh?
yeah, I took tax law like in 2002. I changed the code. Is your primary residence still not taxable?
That's
on
correct.
gain?
250,000 each.
Up to each person.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all it was then.
I am.
Yeah.
But if you had a second home or a vacation home, it's
Well,
taxable.
that's
I'm
on
taxable.
sale.
starting as
That's
soon-
wide
I don't
open.
know. I'm starting
So it's
whenever.
250,000 each.
And they tell me that I need to start.
Yeah.
Because we just sold a house in Pennsylvania for like $350 or something. I came here and bought a house here for $248.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's why I figured. I just don't want something coming.
No, no.
Hey.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I used to be, I was a senior tax manager for City for a while.
Yeah.
And I just hated that.
Yeah.
So,
Gets a lot of code.
yeah, and I, you know, I was a CPA too, and I just
Oh, yeah.
didn't like doing it. So I in my office and here
I just took tax law to Morris. I've had a couple strokes. College in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I didn't finish it. I still
Robert
working.
Moore.
Robert Morris. And third of the class was attorneys. The other third were business people.
Yeah.
And the third one was us just business degrees.
All over the
It was this. It's like, oh, hey, just stop at the legalese.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's tricky. But I liked it.
Yeah.
When I was active in the military, once in a while, the wife would go and sit with the, was actually a judge, which was assumed law. But illegal.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah. So
Good to see you. Good to see you.
good.
Good.
They call it a rice.
So I never got to the claps till I was halfway over.
Shred it.
She said, oh, I don't recognize you. I told her who I was.
Yeah. We'll have fun.
Labor relations judge.
Oh,
He sat on the bench for 10 years, so I had a problem with my.
I'm sorry.
You guys are all good.
Oh, I'm being recorded.
Right in your face.
It'll be all over the internet.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, someone just did let me know
Yeah,
about
I
it,
just saw that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there was one fellow that just went to the.
Oh, okay.
So I was gonna wait for him to get back. Let me introduce you.
Sure, if you want to. I was gonna just basically say I'm not legal, but I am from Yeah. I've been here almost as long as him, so it's all good.
Yeah. You're basically a lifer like me. I'd say you're overqualified.
Well,
too.
it's
It's
like,
like,
I
yeah.
told Marcia, I'm like, the only thing I don't know is that just depends, so it doesn't matter. So like, if anybody has questions, usually I can do it, yeah, that's what I was like, cause she wants to do it, like, question answers, so it's like, I will be kind of
You're gonna try the slides as the.
I did, yes, I went through all just to make sure.
Cool.
And I went through it on my computer too, so. Should be good.
Real.
I told you, I was like, you got it, I did.
Yeah. Oh, everything is.
That's why I'm always. Oh, yeah, I'm
Well, that's
always
good.
here.
You're done.
Well,
I know.
Like about-
better meals.
Yeah.
Like split chicken. I have the one meeting me on. I'm like, I'm here.
Oh, I
It's
have
okay.
some
Love
clue
it.
that. Double hair on it.
Okay, guys.
When you sneak it up, you'll be able to tax.
So we were gonna go ahead and get started with the next presentation, if that's all right. If you're getting cookies, drinks, all that, keep doing your thing. Just want to let you know, so we had a little change up here for you guys. Michael had to leave a little unexpectedly, but we were lucky because we have Desiree with Dodds Memorials here talking to us today. She's kind of a lifelong a member over there at Dodds. She's been doing it for years and
I was
years.
gonna say, I'm like the Sam of Dodds.
So it's gonna be great. Yeah, we love working with Dodds and seeing all the cool stuff that they do. Especially, we've had a couple services this year where they've just made some incredible memorials for people. And it's really, really fascinating, all the different little things that can go into it too. So with that, Desiree, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So I have a short PowerPoint that I'll go through, and then we'll open it up to questions. So if you guys have any questions, we can do that at the end. So the importance of pre-planning for your end-of-life needs. If you didn't think it was important, you wouldn't be here. So we're going to talk a little bit about that kind of on our end. Preparing, what is pre-planning for the end of life? It's preparing ahead of time before someone has the immediate need. Things to consider when pre-planning, your wills, you guys kind of talked about that today, cemetery plots, memorials, funeral arrangements, and real estate or downsizing. Who should consider pre-planning? Anyone can begin the pre-planning process. We do say if you're getting ready to retire, it's a great time to start doing that. If you are a primary caregiver to someone, a loved one, a parent, grandparent, anything, who makes the arrangements, you probably should think about that as well. And then if you're getting ready to enter long-term care or senior living arrangements, chances are you will go through what we call a spend down. If you're in the process of that, or you're going to be at some point going through that process, we definitely recommend that you pre-plan, because when you're doing a spend down, a memorial is something that they recommend that you get with that. Why should I pre-plan my final arrangements? Because it removes the burden from your family and ensures that you get what you want. You get to make those decisions together. It allows you to have an open and engaged conversation about your family's traditions and wishes and kind of what your personality. So you ensure that you get what you want. It isn't difficult. We actually have had a few employees who have done it over the past couple of years, and they come and say, this was way easier than what I thought. And it wasn't just on our end, it was the funeral home end too, going and doing that. It is easier than a lot of people think. When we have couples that come in and sit with us, usually when they leave, they say, well, this was more fun than I thought this was going to be. And usually you don't use the word fun when you're planning for your memorial, but if you're doing it ahead of time, it can be something that you can laugh and joke about. As a couple, you make life decisions together. So where do you want to live? What kind of car do you want to buy? This is another decision that you can make together before there is a need. And most of the time, couples, that it's well worth doing it together. That way, not one has to do it without the other. Another thing that is a big point that we're trying to push right now is you lock in today's price. So if you wait for another 5 years, the price of granite typically doubles every 10 years. So you're locking in today's price and making sure, especially in our changing environment with the way that things are with overseas shipping, with labor. Right now, we are definitely seeing an increase in the price of granite because of those things. So you're locking that in and you don't have to worry about it in the future. What steps should you take? Well, we recommend you do your wills, right? That's something that everyone pretty much knows. We do recommend purchasing your cemetery plots ahead of time because when you go to replan your funeral, chances are they're going to ask you, what cemetery did you want to go to? When you come to us, same thing. If you want to get your memorial on the time, we're going to ask as well. What cemetery are you wanting to go to? And if you already have everything picked out, it's great. It also helps you to become familiar with cemetery regulations. So not everyone knows, but most cemeteries, especially the bigger ones, they have regulations. Sometimes they vary from section to section. So if, for instance, if you go to Calvary, you could have an upright monument in one row, and in the next row, you have to have a flat marker. A lot of the times people don't know that. So when they come to us and, we say, what cemetery do you want to go to? If they don't have anything picked out or they don't know, we recommend you need to go there first, because we can't really assist you unless we know where you're going to go, because it does vary. So that way you become familiar with that, and then there's no surprises. We recommend, obviously, that you visit a trusted funeral home such as Route Song. Like Sam said, we partner with them, because we know that they're trusted. So, and you guys do too, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. We also recommend that you visit a trusted memorial company. If you don't come see us, that's okay. But we do recommend that if you are looking for a company, look for someone who's been around for a while, not someone who's been, around for a couple years. Make sure that you are also looking for a company who can back their product with a written warranty. That's very important, because not all granite is the same. We work with a quarry called Rock of Ages. They're out of Barrie, Vermont. Some of you might have heard of them. They do tours. I know a lot of people come up to me and say, "Hey, I've been there. I've toured their facilities." So we work with them. We're the only company in Southwestern Ohio that works with them, but they have the best manufactured products that you can get in America. So, and they're also their products are backed by a written warranty. So make sure when you're looking for a memorial company that you're looking for someone who's been around, someone who's reputable. So we have a lot of resources available if you're getting ready to pre-plan. Our website has we have a couple videos, but we also have a lot of links to some other sites, such as Have a Talk of a Lifetime. We also have our own pre-planning guides, and I do have some with me today. So if you guys are interested in that, I can give those to you. But it kind of goes through the memorial selection process. It can be overwhelming, so that's why we're here, because we know that not everyone has done this before. So we just want to make sure that the process goes as smooth, for you as it can. This is the end of my slideshow. So I did want to open it up to a couple questions. If nobody has questions, I can continue to kind of go through a little bit more about what to expect when you come in.
I've always kind of heard that, for example, when you're a veteran,
Mm-hmm.
you present your DD 214 and you get a quote unquote free marker.
Yes.
Now, is that an actual, is that a headstone, a grand headstone, or is that just a
So
plaque, or how does that work?
There's a couple different ways that they're doing it now. It used to just be the bronze markers that you see, but they have little plaques now that you can get in the shape of like a folded flag, or you can get like an emblem. So there's a couple different options that you can do right now, but typically what we see are the bronze plaques that they do. And that is it. So there's different ways that you can install it depending on the cemetery that you go to. Some cemeteries will only allow you to put it like in concrete, but a lot of cemeteries you can put them on a backer, which would be like granite. So you would have a flush granite marker, and then that would go straight on to it as well. It protects it a little bit from mowers and things like that. Then we also have where we can match it with the spouse. So because if you're doing a veterans marker, it's only going to be for you. Your spouse does not get one as well, but we do have options where you can match it for them too. But yeah, there's a few different options. They're not granite though, they are bronze.
Do you work for the DOD and National Cemeteries?
We do. I mean,
I wondered who did them.
I'm sorry?
I wondered who did them.
Yeah, I mean, we can go into pretty much any cemetery where our clients are going. So just kind of like the funeral homes do. And typically we can handle the ordering of the marker, but the funeral home also can as well. It just depends on what you want to do. We have a lot of people that come to us because they don't know that If you're not working with a reputable funeral home, they won't say anything to you about it. So some companies, they don't want to do it. They don't want to deal with it. So they just kind of don't mention it to the family, and they just kind of sweep it under the rug, and then they come to us and we explain it to them, and they think, oh, okay, so we can take care of it too. It just depends on what you want to do. Yes, ma'am.
In the National Veterans Cemetery here in Dayton, they have their own monuments, right? They have these little, they're all identified.
Okay, so they do have uprights. They do. We don't typically do those. We only do the bronze part of that. So, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, well, if Margie, do I still have enough time to kind of talk a little bit about, is that okay, Pam? Sure. Okay, so this is not kind of in the presentation, but I just kind of want to go through with you guys what to expect if you come into us. So especially if you're pre-planning. So our main office is in Xenia. It's pretty close to here, about 20 minutes away. If you come in with your spouse, or even if it's just by yourself, you'll meet with one of our consultants. And typically what they'll do is just walk you through your options. We have flat markers. We have upright markers. Or upright monuments. We have slant markers. We have a variety of options. So it can be overwhelming. Plus you have hundreds of different colors. Our pricing is going to depend on what you pick out. So, if you want a marker, it's going to be a different price, obviously, than an upright monument. If you get a gray granite versus a black granite, it's going to be a different price. It all kind of depends on what style you choose. We don't charge for engraving. I think we're one of the only companies around here who doesn't charge for that because we do it in-house. So if you go into Xenia, which is where all of our memorials are manufactured, we have a shop in the back, and you're more than welcome to stop in and you can go through it. We give tours all the time. We also have some really nice stained glass windows in our showroom, so I do recommend just stop by if you want to see those because they're pretty cool. I don't know, Sam, if you've been in there, but they're pretty cool. So we give tours all the time, but we do our own engraving. And that's why we don't charge for it. So if it fits on the front of the memorial, names, dates, designs, rings, anything, we don't charge for it unless it's a laser. That's a little bit different. But we do have our own in-house laser machine as well that if you come in for a tour, you can look at that as well. So we kind of have it all there. But the memorialist will go through all of your options as far as, granite colors, styles, and things like that. And kind of once you narrow that down, then we start with the design process. So is there something specific that you want on there? Did you like going to the beach? Because we can do a beach scene. We've had people put campers on there. We've had boats. We've had all sorts of different things. We've had beer steins. I've seen all types of different things go through our shop. There's really no end to what you can put on there. We just want to make sure that it's what you want, it speaks to your family, and that you guys are happy. We are not a cookie cutter monument company, so if you come in, we don't say, you have this to choose from or this to choose from. Which one do you want? That's not how we operate. Some companies do. They have what's called stock. We typically don't keep stock because we don't want to pigeonhole you when you're looking at something. So it's more, what do you want? What color do you want? What size do you want? What design do you want? And we kind of can go from there. We do the ordering through our main office, and then everything comes into us, and then we would engrave it. And then we also have a setting team. So we have 2 trucks that go out every day, and they set, that's what they do. We have hundreds of cemeteries from Piqua all the way down to northern Kentucky. So they have and then we go over to like Indiana and Washington Courthouse, if you know where that is. They go all over every day. That's what they do. So we have some really awesome setting guys. We don't charge for setting. That's something that some companies will charge for. But because we do our own setting, we don't have to. If you order from, say, an online company, they will send your monument on a flatbed truck. They will drop it off at the cemetery, and that's all they do. They will not do anything else. We actually have some cemeteries that call us to see if we will set monuments for online companies. But we don't because it's a liability, but we will do all of our own setting. And sometimes mistakes happen. So if something happens and we set your memorial and maybe it's the wrong way, our truck guys will go back out and they will fix it for you. And that's not something that everyone will do. We back all of our Granite products by warranty. So if you purchase from us and something happens to your memorial, you come to us and we will take care of it for you. And like I said, we just want to make sure that your family is happy, that you're happy, and that you guys are getting what you want. So that's kind of how we work and how we operate. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. Does anyone have any other questions? No? Well, I will be here, as I say, I'll be here for the rest of the, remainder of the time. So if you guys have questions, feel free to come stop by and ask. I'm going to turn it over to Pam.
Thank you, Desiree. And if you ever wanted to find some just phenomenal examples of their work, Calvary Cemetery uses them exclusively. They're the only monument company that they trust over there. Really, really beautiful cemetery. And if you look around, they just have some incredible stuff. There was a gentleman we served this year, and the monument that he had was probably 12 foot tall, an entire pieta with a fountain in it, and they did all of that work to it. It's you can't miss it. If
I was
you're
gonna
going
say,
outside.
like I said, we can do anything. We do buildings, but we also do flat markers. There's nothing that we don't do. And yeah, we work a lot with Calvary. If you're interested, our website, it's doddsmemorials.com. We actually redid our website this year, and we have a search bar at the top. So if you say, I want a red monument, and you search that in our search bar, then we have a gallery. It'll pull all of those colors, and you can kind of look through it as well, just to get some ideas. If you don't want to stop in, but you kind of are curious, that's a good option too. So yeah.
No, thanks, Desiree. And one last point that I like to make, I can't stress this enough for all the folks that come in. We haven't shared this fact with you, but it's about 60% of the families that come in here choose cremation. And I'm okay. There's a million different ways to do funerals right. Okay. But one of the things that people sometimes get wrong is when they don't have a final resting place picked out, even when you're choosing cremation. I've heard of, how many families have you worked with, Margie, where, we kept grandpa in the closet for 15 years. Or you just hear about stuff like that. People ride in the backs of their trunks because they don't ever have the forethought to take somebody out of the car, right? When it comes down to it, cremation, you really only have two options, okay? You can either do a scattering, right? That's pretty popular. If there's a special place to you or your family, that's always an option. Or permanent memorialization in a cemetery. Taking grandma home and leaving her in the closet isn't really an option. Where's she gonna be in 100 years or 1,000 years? You gotta think on time scales that we usually aren't even really thinking about. So if nothing else, just keep that in mind. Have a plan for that. Figure it out now, because you don't want to get caught with that kind of thing, because we see it.
And most of our memorials that we do can be cremation. So even a traditional upright memorial now, we can actually core holes on the bottom of it, and urns can go up there, or remains can go up there. So anything's possible now. It used to be where you would see people, they just did boulders, or there was like a little pillar that the people did, and they're like, well, we don't want this. This is not what we want. We want an upright. So we figured out a way to do it. So even if you're cremated, you can go into a traditional memorial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Sorry about my little rant there. I just want to make sure. I don't want to hear those stories anymore, if you got them. So next we have Pam Bollery. She is through Funeral Directors Life Insurance Company. She'll talk a little bit about it. The state of Ohio has figured out a great system to keep your money protected and keep you protected. Because back in the day, when there were zillions of family-owned funeral homes and they pre-planned their funeral, there was a time where if that funeral home folded and you had your pre-plans with them and you had your money with them and they went out of business, guess what happens to your money? It's gone, right? So this is who we choose to protect your money. She's one of those people that comes out here and loves explaining all this stuff to you, of course, right? So with that, we're going to leave Pam Bollery to explain why it's important that you get your insurance if you are going to pre-plan and all that. Thank you, Pam.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pam Bollery. So I work with funeral homes in Ohio and Kentucky, and I've been doing this, like Tommy said, a little over 25 years, and I get to come talk to people like you all. And as Sam mentioned, I'm with Funeral Directors Life, so I'll get into that here in a minute. But I want to talk to you about the process of pre-planning, because we all know that we're going to face that in the future. And when you think about the people, we plan for everything in life. We
plan for our families and education, vacations, travel. And then we purchase insurance to protect our homes and our car, our boat, whatever that might be in the event that something could happen. Well, we're all gonna be faced with, well, hello, we come in, we prepare ourselves what might or might not happen, but someday we're all going to be faced with our funeral, because the mortality rate in Ohio is 100%. Actually, Florida is 100%. So it's just, we want to help you be a little better prepared. It's not an easy conversation. Trust me, if you go to your kids and you say, I want to talk to you about my funeral plan, they're going to say, are you sick or you're dying? And I don't want to talk about it. So it's important for you to be here and get some of this information. And we're going to kind of walk you through that process, should you choose to plan in advance. So if you think about those people, your children, how will they be feeling? They just lost someone they love. A lot of times there's confusion because we never really talked about it. And I'm in the business, and my husband had a heart attack 1.5 years ago, and I always thought he wanted to be cremated because I want to be cremated. I want to be buried with the Ohio State hat on and, all this stuff. And I was like, we should probably talk more about this in the future. But, my kids, I hear people say to me all the time, my kids know what I want. Well, 10 years from now, or whenever someone dies in the future, are they really going to recall some of those things? So it's really important to have those documented. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made in a short amount of time when someone passes. I'm going to go through that. And a lot of times there could be some emotional overspending. The kids don't always agree, right? You have multiple children. Well, we want mom to have this, or should mom have this? So we want to help you kind of pick out these things so they don't have to be faced with all those decisions in the future. So obviously there's an emotional benefit because if you picked out everything, it's a lot less stress for your family. More families are dispersed more than ever. My brother lives in Chicago. My parents lived in Florida. I just moved them back to Ohio after 30 years in Florida, but they are back to be with family and better medical care. But there's also a financial part of it as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It protects your family. We just don't know what will happen in the future and how, and so you want to make sure you have things in place, having important documents in place, having people know where those documents are. It prevents mistakes. Millions of dollars go unclaimed every year in life insurance, Social Security, veterans benefits, because people just didn't know they existed. They didn't know you had a life insurance policy. I'm sure you get people come in, I need a death certificate. We just found this life insurance policy, 5 years ago. So we want to help you kind of document everything. We want to help you create something meaningful, just like your marker, something personal. Like Desiree said, there's no cookie cutter. There's no right or wrong. And you can see here at Route Sewing, they could do just about anything. I'm sure you've got some stories of some very unique funerals. I know I've been to some unique funerals, and we want people to leave feeling that was really a good funeral, right? I got to learn something about that person. The eulogies are so important, but how can we personalize it to the family? So we'll kind of help you do that. And then you can save money should you pay in advance. And I will show you that here in a second. And then there's just the peace of mind. So it just makes sense. That's why you're here, to get some questions and some information. So Dr. Alan Wolfeld is a well-known grief counselor. He's been working in our profession for about 4 decades. And he's created this hierarchy, or the purpose of funerals. And, during the pandemic, we missed a lot of this because we couldn't have these gatherings. And a lot of people went through a lot of additional grief. And so we want to help you plan something for your family. The funeral is for the living. So the first part of it is the bottom part of the triangle is basically the reality. We have to face the reality that someone has passed. We feel it in our heart. We have to realize it in our mind. The recall is the sharing of stories, which is so important. That happens at a visitation and a gathering, which is where your family also gets the support. People come, they don't necessarily know the deceased. They're coming because they want to support you. You've lost someone that you love. And whether it's friends, coworkers, community, and now people with live streaming, have any of you live streamed or watched a funeral service? Right? So, I mean, I just think that's something that's going to be the norm. You know, not everybody can, you know, with dispersed families, like my mom, she had a friend of hers pass. She said, you need to go to the funeral and represent us. And I couldn't go either. And I was hoping it was going to be live streamed, but it wasn't. So many times when you can live stream, you can still like sign a register book. So they'll still know you were there. You just maybe couldn't physically be there for some reason. The next thing is expression. Grief is internal and mourning is external, and mourning is what occurs at a funeral. So we don't want your family to miss. That is kind of the foundation of the grieving process to get it started. So we want to help you make that rock solid for your family. The meaning, we often looked at, you know, was it a life well lived? You know, my grandmother was 92 when she passed, and she ended up in the nursing home and things like that. So you kind of look at things in life. And then there's the final part, which is the transcendence. It's moving into that life without that person. You know, before I talked to my mom on the phone every day when she lived in Florida. Now I see her almost every day. And so there's going to be a day though when I don't. So that's changing my life into what that will be without her. So we want to help you create something special and unique to you. Then all the elements that make up that funeral. So looking at, you know, whatever, if you have a favorite flower, like a sunflower, and it's December, we'll get you sunflowers. You know, so you have a favorite music, if you like Christmas music and you pass in July, we want to make it personal for your family, for you. You know, how will they be impacted and how can we help them emotionally through that process? So these are all the things, and I'm going to go through these real quick. 3 steps to funeral planning, easy. First step is getting all of your vital statistics information, all of your biographical information that the funeral director would need for the death certificate. The second is talking about your specific wishes, what you want for your funeral service, what merchandise, things like that you want. And third, we can talk about some financial solutions if you choose to do that. So we also think there's 3 essential elements to a healing funeral. Some type of ceremony. Doesn't have to be religious, but some type of ceremony for your family. The second would be that gathering. So the visitation, whether it's an hour before, or maybe it's after, or the night before, wherever it might be. You know, that's when the hugs come out. Sometimes when you don't know what to say to somebody, just being there says it all. Finally, there's a resting place, like Sam mentioned. You're either cremated or you're buried, but where are you going to be? You're helping your family with that decision. How many of you have cemetery property? Wow, good. Okay, good. Good for you. So you got that step done. How many of you had made pre-arrangements? A few.
I better practice what I preach. I did it like 25 years ago when I got in this business.
Me too. Cameras on me because I haven't done mine quite yet.
Oh, wait.
We'll talk after this.
Wait, I want to schedule an appointment with you.
Yeah.
So we want to help you create something unique that has that balance between what you want and what your family is going to need to begin that grieving process. Funeral costs are also broken into 3s. So there are services, there are merchandise, and cash advance items. The services is everything that the funeral home does when the phone rings and your loved one is in their care is a lot. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of things that need to be done. This is an event. It's like planning a wedding in a week. You know, it's very, very. If you've done a lot of this heavy lifting for them, it's so much easier for them at the time. Merchandise would be your caskets, your vaults, your markers, anything like that. Memorial books, urns. There's so many options with cremation. There's different jewelry and there's different keepsake items. There's just so much to choose from. They can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but if you've picked it out for your family, they usually are going to say, this is what mom wanted, this is what we're going to do. Some people pick it just because of a favorite color, or maybe there's a price point they're comfortable with, or just kind of a personal theme. So cash advance items are third-party charges. So that's the florist, a hairdresser, death certificates, cemetery opening, closing, all those things, newspaper, all those things that will need to be taken care of, but the funeral home doesn't want you to have to cut checks to everyone, so they just include it in the funeral contract, but they don't upcharge that. So we put it in a funeral arrangement when you sit down to add some of these items, so there's no surprises for your family at the time. Why do people do this? Well, you can save money. Whatever else can you pay today's price and not know when you're gonna need it? You can't go buy a car and get a 2030 model, so it's very important. Most people don't purchase insurance anymore for their funeral. It's life insurance is for the living, so your spouse can continue living in the home. Maybe you want to, have that cover some medical bills or different things like that. Obviously, inflation, if you're paying today's prices, just like every other industry, prices are, I can't believe what you pay for eggs, it's just crazy, but little things like that. Most people pay it in a lump sum, but you can pay over time if you choose to. And then again, it's just the peace of mind. Some people do it because they've been told they need to do this. Medicaid that Mike mentioned is a spend down situation, and I'll show you that here in a second. They just want to start making payments. You have the money maybe somewhere in a CD or in a shoebox under your bed or in a bag of frozen peas in the freezer. Some lady told me that, but her niece knows where it is. And I was like, what if something happens to your niece? What are you gonna do? I would throw a frozen bag of peas away if I was cleaning that. So anyway, just thinking of those things and having it taken care of. So Medicaid, they say about 75% of people eventually that are in a nursing home, not coming out of a nursing home, probably will go on to Medicaid eventually. My grandmother was one. So she started out in independent and assisted and ended up in nursing care. And that once her funds were depleted, basically is when Medicare kicked in, or Medicaid kicked in. This is just
Are
a
you
brief
or someone
video.
you know facing the decision to enter a long-term care facility in the near future? Or perhaps you have a family member currently residing in a nursing home. If so, we have some very important information for you that could help preserve your assets and protect your family financially. Typically, an individual's assets will go toward paying nursing home expenses until their life savings are depleted. That is when Medicaid begins to pay for the person's care. However, long before that person's funds go to the nursing home, qualifying individuals and their spouses can set aside Medicaid-exempt assets with a specially prepared prepaid funeral plan. Now is the time to plan and protect your assets before it's too late. Our knowledgeable funeral pre-arrangement specialists can assist you in creating a prepaid burial or cremation plan specifically for the purpose of Medicaid spend down.
So kind of to piggyback a little bit on what Mike was talking about, we deal with a lot of people that are like, Medicaid, my social worker sent me down, I have to do this today, or I have to get this money spent before next week. That Medicaid spend down time. So a lot of times they don't think about coming to the funeral home until they're down to those depleted, assets to qualify for the Medicaid. And it's a process because I had to do it with my grandmother and it took 3 months and you have to document everything. So it's something, if you know of someone in this situation or could be in this situation, I want to explain to you a little bit about some of the benefits that are unique to Ohio on burial space items. But one thing is, if you look at, let's say my husband goes into a nursing home. So my spouse, I can keep my home in the car and then look at it something easy like the cash assets. So just saying we had some cash assets, not considering a lot of other things, just to keep the math simple. Let's say it was 200,000. 100,000 is mine, the other 100's his. But his $100,000 spend down, he could pay for his complete funeral and services everything and mine out of that spend down money. So that would, let's say my funeral is 10,000, his is 10,000, that takes 20,000 right out of there. It's not considered an asset with Medicaid. But in Ohio, you can also use that spend down money and purchase burial space items, so burial space contracts for immediate family members, which would be, your children, any living siblings or parents, no grandchildren, and spouses of them. So what does that include? Burial space items includes anything related to the burial. So you could purchase, set aside money for a casket, a vault. You could go ahead and purchase a marker out of that spend down money. So have it there in place. Anything just related to that final disposition, you could do a contract on your family using that spend down money. So it's kind of a unique thing in Ohio. We call it BSI or burial space items. I know that there's some information in your packets on that. If you have any other questions, you can let us know. So what's the benefits? So basically, Sam mentioned, I work for Funeral Directors Life. If you prepay your funeral, the funeral home cannot keep that money. They can't put it in a bank, they can't keep it. They have to put it with a qualified insurance or trust. Funeral Directors Life, we've been doing this for over 40 years. We only work with funeral homes. We do not deal direct or final expense or anything. We only work with funeral homes. So if your funeral is $7,820, that's what you're putting in the contract. They hope, Brownstone Funeral Home, because you guarantee services. So they're hoping that it's going to keep up with rising costs, because if it doesn't, they're going to take that loss. So they put it with Funeral Directors Life. On average, our contracts grow about 2% a year. So they're hoping that keeps up with inflation. There's no tax disadvantage if you choose to move. So if you made your plans here and you choose to move to Florida, you can transfer them to any other funeral home. If for some reason Brownstone wasn't here, you still have a contract with Funeral Directors Life that you can take to any other funeral home.
I got a question. Who, if they go out of business or whatever, who holds the contract?
They don't own the contract, it's your funeral.
Yeah, but I understand that. But who's actually got that money in the contract that'll honor it?
Another funeral home. Like they just, for example, purchased Morris Son's funeral home,
Okay.
or purchased the pre-needs from there because Morris Son sold the land.
In the state of Ohio, if somebody was to sell their funeral home or go out of business, it's a requirement that you have to do something with those contracts. And I'll let you know right up front, I don't plan on going anywhere. So we're going to be around. But if something were to happen, for the sake of argument, we would have to find another funeral home that would accept those contracts. Now, whether they're going to honor those contracts is another thing. But we did with our Morris families. We said, whatever you paid Morris, we're going to honor that contract for whatever you paid into it. You won't owe us another dime for services or merchandise that you got then.
Then everybody who paid you the contract of money, they'll be notified who holds them now.
Yes, you got to send out notifications, all that kind of stuff. We just went through it. It's tricky because some people made their contracts 30 years ago and they don't have the same address or phone number, but we did our best to try and get out and reach out to them.
The State Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors requires that. Funeral homes are very regulated.
We sent a letter out and then we actually had an open house, 2 different open houses, invited all the people that had pre-arrangements with Morris here to meet the Routzong family, to see the facilities. They said that I've sat down one-on-one with I don't know how many families and reviewed what they did and made updates on like addresses and, next of kin and those kinds of things.
But
Yeah.
I can introduce you. This is the
Oh,
original route song.
There he is.
This is second generation route song. I'm third in this floor, so he's still around and still kicking my butt. Trying to figure out how and stuff. So,
We say he likes to drive around, make sure we haven't burnt down the place quite yet.
Anyway, I thought he was having to show up. I thought it'd be kind of fun to introduce you.
Oh, fun.
Nice to see you all.
He's going to lunch now, so it's
Lunchtime, that's a good time to show up.
yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. He likes that.
So I'm gonna run through this scenario here real brief. What if something were to happen to you or someone you love? Who would the person or people be that would be at the funeral home? Because again, we talked about there's a lot that needs to happen, a lot of decisions. So they're gonna talk about, what type of service would you like? Traditional service or traditional burial, traditional cremation, would embalming? Embalming's required if there's going to be a public viewing, maybe you just want a private family viewing. There's just some options that you have. You can be embalmed, have a viewing, and still be cremated. There's rental caskets. I know that sounds like you, but there's a container inside the rental casket that comes out. You have to be cremated in a cardboard container anyway. You're not just put in the retort. So that center comes out and that's what goes into the crematorium. We're gonna talk about where would you like to have it? The church, here at the funeral home, graveside, a combination of all of those. What clothing will be worn? Like I mentioned, you know, it's funny because my parents just, when they just moved here, my mom said, this is the black suit I want your dad laid out in. That's exactly what she said. And I was like, seriously, Mom? When's the last time he wore that thing? And he's not a suit person anymore. He's 88 years old, you know, and I'm like, get rid of it. So you kind of think about those things, you know, what would you like to have? I mean, my grandmother saved her dress for my wedding, which was 30 years ago. We were like, that's just not grandma anymore. You know, comfy sweaters, all that kind of stuff. What jewelry will be worn and who should get that jewelry before they close the casket or before cremation? Hairdresser. How do you want your hair to look? We can put a picture in the file for you to have on file. You don't want your daughter-in-law coming in and doing your hair, right? So make sure you get it the way you want. How will that visitation look? You know, will there be food? Will it be a little more social? You know, I have been to a lot of funerals. I try not to, with my own is get lines formed, you know, because I went to a funeral, it was a funeral director, his mom died, there are 5 kids, and they each kid stood in an area of the room because people go through that line and they're like, I don't know all these people, but I do know that guy, you know, so there's just some different things we can help you do. Who will the minister be or the celebrant, you know, doing the services, what kind of readings would you like, the eulogy, or multiple people doing that? What type of music would you like? Live music, very cool. We had a pianist at my grandmother's. It was very cool. We actually danced before the minister said some things. I said some things, and I asked everyone to join us for one last dance with Hazel. Really cool. Cost nothing, but very impactful for the family. Who will the pallbearers be? So then we talked a little bit too about the death certificate. This information that they're going to need to get the death certificate. So this is all your biographical, all your vital statistics, your full legal name. Now, you think your kids know that when they're sitting in a very emotional time? You know, your date of birth, your place of birth, your parents' name, social security number, mother's maiden name. That could be a tough one.
Just stump her.
Yeah, they have to really think about it. I want to get the spelling correct and everything as well. So if you're a veteran, your DD-214, you want to have that on file. If you don't have it, we'll help you get it. Get a copy of it so you can get the benefits that you deserve. We'll talk about your education, different things like that that went undocumented in there. Who knows you better than you? Why don't you write part of your obituary? You know, it used to be that the newspaper, most people just put a little bit, if anything, in the newspaper, right? Because it costs so dang much money. Well, now you've got the websites. So look at how much you learn so much about somebody now in an obituary. My mom has written hers. My dad has sort of written his. But just think about what you once said. It can always be updated. The personalization, like I said, we want to talk to you a little bit about how can we, if you like to golf, like my dad, everybody's going to leave with a golf ball. Hit one more for Charlie. You know, just thinking about how can we help personalize those things for you. So once these questions have been answered, then your family will be faced with the merchandise selections. So we go into what we call a selection room because there's lots of choices. There's metal and wood caskets with various colors of interiors, velvet, crepe. So maybe your family says, well, I want to look at some metal. Okay, well, there's 16 gauge, 18 gauge, and 20 gauge and stainless steel in a variety of colors, just like a car. They're beautiful. It can be very overwhelming. This is where emotional overspending can occur. But if you picked it, they don't even need to go in that selection room, right? They don't need to be faced with all of those decisions. My mom, when we were doing her arrangements, wanted this white casket with pink interior, and I was like, I will never find anything to match that pink interior clothing-wise. So we got a dark purple casket, which is beautiful, with like a cream-colored interior. So so many choices, but you know, kind of like Desiree, you know, my mom and I could make fun. We were together, right? You know, she always wanted to be in a mausoleum. Don't bury me. Don't put me in the ground until she found out how much they were. And there was $8,000. She goes, "Are you kidding me? How much is it for to bury me?" And they said, "Well, it starts around $1,500. I'll be buried." You know, but if something would have happened to her, we would have paid $8,000 and put her in that mausoleum where she wanted. So I get off tangent sometimes, so sorry. we look at other types of caskets, the wood, there's cherry, oak, pecan. They now make caskets out of barnwood, super cool looking. Anyway, so many choices, and with cremation, you're looking at different urns or different jewelry or different options there. So same thing there. Most of you had your cemetery, so I commend you for that. Then the cemeteries require some sort of outer burial container or vault. Whether if it's going to be buried, whether it's an urn or a casket, it has to go in some sort of vault to protect the integrity of the grounds, to protect the casket. So as you can see, there are a lot of options. How will the procession look? Question after question. It's overwhelming, right? You're going, how? I see some of you taking notes like, oh my goodness. So there's a lot of questions. So you can leave your family with those choices, those decisions on your, for you. Or you can take about an hour and a half, sit down with Margie. And so the only question your family will have to answer in the future is, when would you like to have service? Because that's the only thing we wouldn't know, because we're going to have everything else already documented for them. So ask yourself just what makes more sense? What makes more sense for you, for your family, and how can we help you? So we have these planning guides for you, if you would like these. Now, don't you take one if you're not going to fill it out. Because it says on here, on the front, dear loved ones, I prepared this guide with much love and care for you. And it says that you prepared it for them to make it easier. Now, if they find this someday and they open it up and it looks like that, you didn't make anything easier on them. So if you take it, we want you to, and they're free.
I didn't see that.
We have it in a PDF version if anyone would like it electronically. So the first page in it is all the vital statistics, everything they're going to need for the death certificate information. The next, they're not in your packets. Margie has them here.
Okay.
Because she can give you multiple ones if you want. The second page is family and friends at the top. So you might have coffee with Bill every Tuesday. Maybe your kids don't know Bill. We've all probably heard about the passing of someone after the fact. I'm like, gosh, I would have liked to have gone. I would have liked to have been notified. So you can listen, people here, your family knows your family, but who maybe you don't want to get missed. Then there's an area where you can put important documents as far as your will or trust, IRAs, credit cards. Just list things, that they're there. You don't have to put specific accounts, but at least your family will know what to look for. Think of all the passwords we have these days, constantly updating and changing. Where are those? So your family can have access if you have social media and Facebook access. They need to take those accounts down. So you make sure you document a lot of that information. We're trying to kind of help you get things organized so your family won't have to search for a lot of things. And then the back page is your specific funeral wishes. That this is what we consider one of the most important parts, is to document some of that information. There's a great website called funeralbasics.org.
Do you have one of those?
And you can go to funeralbasics.org, and there are a lot of articles on there there's Medicaid information on there, veterans benefits, how to write an obit, how to write a eulogy, different information on there. So funeralbasics.org is a great reference. So let's just recap real quick. First step is sitting down and getting your vital statistics information, so all your biographical information. Second step is talking about your specific services and merchandise wishes. And then we can talk about some payment options should you choose to pay in advance. We're trying to make it easy for your family, easier for your family in the future. But the process is pretty easy. Like Desiree said, that if people do this, nobody has ever said to Sam, I wish my mom hadn't pre-planned because I would have liked to sat here with you and done all this. No one has ever said that. Usually they say, I didn't know we could do this. So thank you all for coming today, because that's why you got this information. I'd like to mention too, we have a protection plan that's called On the Go Protection. And Mark, there's some info, if any of you are interested, will give you some information. So On the Go is similar to like a travel insurance. So a lot of people purchase insurance, like if I'm traveling overseas, if something were to happen to get home. So this plan basically is a one-time fee. It's $525, covers worldwide travel, lifetime membership. It is to get you home in the event you pass away from your residence. So if you die more than 75 miles from your residence, some of you, if you've snowbird in Florida or Arizona or anywhere, it could cost a lot to get you back home. Typically from just, let's say Florida, just the airfare is what, $600? More than that, yeah, the airfare is crazy right now. But they also would work with a funeral home in that area. There's a lot of corporate firms, especially in Florida, they would try to find a family-owned firm. That firm could do the removal, the embalming or cremation, and get you back here home. So your family doesn't have to worry about going down there, taking care of things. So it's called On the Go Protection. If you're interested, Margie will have some information for you.
Does that include overseas?
Yes, it's worldwide.
And it's one time, it lasts your whole life.
Yeah.
So people think they have to buy it year after year. It's one time, you're covered for good.
Yeah.
And how far away is it? It goes anywhere in the whole world.
As long as you're more than 75 miles from home. So for example, if you died in Columbus, Route Song would go pick you up, that's not that far.
Yeah, but if you're in Cancun, it's a different story.
Right? There's nightmares. I had a lady tell me once that they went on a mission trip with their church to Africa, and one of the parishioners died there. And it cost the family almost $20,000 to get him home. And she was like, I would have left him there. So it takes a lot. That's funny. So, okay, so just what steps can you take now? Well, Margie, if you'd like to schedule a personal appointment, there's no obligation to you. You can get questions answered for you, talk about specific things for you. The Thoughtful Decisions Guides, looks like she passed them out. We have plenty available, or a digital version. We appreciate your feedback. You have evaluation forms in your packet, just how this was. This is our second one this year, but we like to plan these a couple times a year. And, we have one tonight at 6. If you know anybody who could benefit from this information, please let us know, and we'd love to have them join us tonight. Or you could do nothing, but we don't like that part. So we want to help you. Yes, sir.
In Ohio, how long does it take to get a death certificate? I know Washington State is 18 days, so.
Great question. I wish I could give you an exact day. Ideally, in the state code, it's 72 hours that a doctor or a coroner has to sign the death certificate. And I wish you could tell you that 100% of doctors are good at that. I would say probably 99%. Usually 3 days, 9 times out of 10.
Really?
Sometimes there's doctors that are a little tricky. Sometimes a death will happen over a holiday weekend or something like that. Maybe the doctor went out of town, went on a cruise. I've waited up to 3 weeks before. So it can be tricky. Most of the time, 3 days. And trust me, after 3 days, we are calling, emailing to see how quick we can get it.
We have like pit bulls that work in the front office. And they're like, I need it.
Yeah.
And they don't look
And if you ever
fast.
needed more death certificates, usually, at least in Montgomery County, we're pretty good at getting them turned around within about 24, 48 hours. If you ever wanted to order more, some counties do only mail though. So that takes, from the time it takes to get to Columbus to Dayton through mail. But great question.
Because you can't, because in Washington State, it takes 18 days. And I was, I ran the executor and all that. And you couldn't do anything with their finances. And I was on all the finances, but some things you can't do for 18 days.
Yeah.
So I carried it in a truck in an urn for 18 days.
Yeah. And thankfully in Ohio, it's a lot better because
And have a
legally
permit.
we file a complaint if it's over 72 hours, business days, or 3 business days essentially. So they've got it figured out, and it's worked really well. We get them turned around a lot faster here in Ohio because of it, but just can't guarantee it because, things happen, life happens, doctors go out of town, that kind of stuff. So thankfully, it's not like Washington.
Oh.
Thankfully.
Yeah, for sure. One more form I want to mention to you all, because a lot of people don't know about this form. It's called Appointment of Representative for Disposition of Bodily Remains, Funeral Arrangements, and Burial or Cremation Goods and Services. I know that's a lot, but we call it Appointment of Representation form. So you can appoint somebody, kind of like your healthcare POA. So if you were to pass and you have 4 children and you don't have pre-arrangements or anything documented, the 4 children come in, and the example you used before, are they all gonna agree on things?
Nothing.
So a lot of disagreements can occur. We don't want that to happen during that time, right?
Yeah.
You can actually appoint one child specifically. You can appoint a friend. You can appoint anybody you want to be able to answer on behalf. They're not your POA. They have nothing to do with you until you're deceased. So you can appoint a specific person for that, or you can leave it up to the kids to basically sign off. Because if you've done your pre-arrangements, they still want to have, as far as cremation.
Very important in terms of cremation.
Identity. Yeah.
I gotta tell you how important this is. I worked on the legislation for this particular document. So a friend of mine is in hospice. He was younger than me by a couple of years. This is like 10, 15 years ago. And his wife serves in the divorce papers while he was in hospice.
Oh.
Pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah.
So we executed this form, made his brother the appointee. And as a consequence, when he died, she thought she was gonna come in and do everything, just pick him up, burn him, and we're not gonna do any services and stuff. I said, well, I'm sorry, appointment of representative, and he's the one in charge. And she went straight to his attorney, who I knew happened to be pretty well, and goes, hey, what about this document? It's not legal, is it? And he goes, absolutely, it's rock solid, I got an appointment of it and stuff. So critically important, especially if you have
Multiple kids.
that are spread all over the United States. This document will save a lot of anxiety and stuff like that, so.
And if it's gonna be cremation, we require somebody to come in and identify the person, because we might pick someone up at a hospital or a hospice facility. We have to make sure they release the right person back to us, because we've never had any cremated the wrong body, and nor do we ever plan to. So that's really critical, because they could be the person that identifies.
What Margie's talking about is very, very, knock on wood, we've never cremated the wrong body here at Routes on Funeral Home. And I can't say that about my competition that's out there. So.
Yeah, imagine that showing up to grandma's funeral and it's not grandma in the casket.
That only happened.
Yeah,
That just
that was within 2 years. Yeah.
So, and it happens a lot around the country. So we have a policy here that everybody gets identified. Cremation, burial, doesn't matter, if possible, before we close the casket or cremate the body. And I'm kind of anal about that, as these people can tell you. So I can't tell you how important that form is in order to do that, because we all know that every family gets along beautifully with each other, harmony, and all that stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Tell us the name of the form again, please.
The what?
The name of the form.
We can give you the form?
Oh,
Let's give it to you.
Make copies.
It's called appointment of representative. We have them. Margie's got
I
them.
use it a lot.
We kind of require this with all the pre-natal arrangements that we did.
Okay.
Okay. You have that. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? I know Sam wants to close up. Does anybody have any questions? We'll be around if you do, if you would like to talk, and then he wants to tell you a little bit about them.
I sure do. So, thank you, Pam. I appreciate everything. And so actually, Desiree and myself, we've been working on this project for the last couple of years now, and COVID interrupted us and all that kind of stuff. But it's something that we're really excited about. In our culture here in Ohio, we do not like talking about that. That's pretty clear. And you guys are taking a great step being here today. I can't tell you how much time and trouble it saves families just by putting something down. It's so important. But what we are trying to do is start an event called Before I Die. And what it is a 2-day long seminar, essentially, that we're gonna have. We have all kinds of events. We're partnering with Woodland Cemetery as well. There's gonna be a cemetery tour, kind of like a haunted spooky cemetery tour. We're gonna have seminars here. We're gonna have what's called death cafes. And it's going to, you think this meeting had a lot of information, we give you the rest of it. Downsizing, Medicare stuff, all of those different kinds of things. Hospice, how does it work? When do they come in? We're working on getting our whole slate of events put together, but we've got our dates set up here now. We're gonna try to keep it fun, entertaining. Again, what TR likes to say is, you know, talking about death doesn't kill you, kind of like talking about sex doesn't make you pregnant, right? So we're trying to change the culture here a little bit. We're so excited about this program. Find us on the web. Once we get our slate put together, we will have more updates, email lists, all that kind of stuff to get us started if you're interested in that. So thanks for hearing us out. It'll be pretty cool and it'll be very fun.
You want to give tours?
Yeah, so a couple different directions we can go from here. We are all done. You got plenty more food here if you guys are still hungry, anything like that. TR loves giving tours around the funeral home. By all means, if you want to take a tour, you can do that. Also, if you guys want to ask me any questions, I'm right here. Here's your questions. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yes, there will be a sign up that we will have.
If you want to sign up, sorry,
No,
Sam.
you do your thing.
If you want to sign up today, you come see me and I'll take care of everything for you.
Yeah.
I'll be right out here at this table right here, so I'll sign you up, or if you have questions.
Miss anything?
That's good, yeah, if you have questions or anything, I'll be out there.
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you all being here today. My number one job, I'm here to help. So that's what I'm here for. So just let me know if there's anything you guys need, okay? Thank you all.
I appreciate your feedback. If you guys just want to leave your feedback forms on the table here, let's go, that'd be great.
Give you the opportunity to evaluate.